Thank you. And I really appreciate the chance to discuss this particular topic that's so dear to my heart. So let's get started. Here's a disclaimer to begin with. Patriarchy is kind of a dirty word, and it unfortunately is equated with, man bad, woman good. And I want to make it quite clear as we go forward in this conversation that it was a very small subset of predatory males that were really responsible for spreading the ideology of patriarchy around the planet. So, there will be no man bashing. Everybody feel comfortable. Any gentlemen in the audience, you don't have to leave. I'm not going to be attacking you, okay? All right. Deb has already done an able job of explaining who I am. As she said, University of Chicago PhD in literature, 11 award-nominated best-selling historical mysteries at one point or another. The Arcana is a 7-book series, but the spin-off, Trove Chronicles, I'm continuing the adventure because every book gives me a chance to discuss archaeology, pre-patriarchal archaeology on a different continent. And it existed, matristic history existed everywhere, except Antarctica, because the Penguins were not too forthcoming about telling me what they were doing. So the reason I'm establishing my cred up front here is that some of this theory may prove to be kind of, if you haven't heard it before, it may seem really lunatic fringe, and I might seem like a candidate to live in a basement with a tinfoil hat. So I'm saying I'm a scholar, I've got my doctorate, I'm not crazy, my mother had me tested. So just whatever you hear today, just accept that I researched it thoroughly and there is solid basis for the theory that I'm putting forth. So first of all, this is what we'll be discussing today, what patriarchy is. And when I say where on earth did it originate, that isn't just a figure of speech. There was a very specific place on earth where patriarchy came from, and it spread from one very precise point on the globe. And there was a whole lot that preceded it that was not patriarchal, that was matristic. So let's start with a definition. What is patriarchy? A system of society or government in which men hold political, religious, and economic power from which women are largely excluded. Now deal with this visual for a minute. And I chose many of these visuals specifically because of their graphic impact. All the male figures are standing on the right. They're all armored. Women on the left are kneeling, eyes downcast, not speaking. The guy in the middle, I assume, is mansplaining something, but he's definitely on the other side. And really, the gender imbalance that this represents is the essence of patriarchy. But it has some very specific characteristics that define it. And in a nutshell, only one. Patriarchal cultures are geared toward continuous warfare. You don't see it so much now because patriarchy has been dimming for some time, but in its original state, it was intended to be a militaristic social organization. If you think about epic poetry, the Iliad, the Odyssey, anything from that period and sometime beyond, everything was a glorification of battle exploits by one hero or another. The resources of a culture were funneled almost exclusively into chronic wars of unprovoked aggression because that was the way you got rich. You expanded your territories, you conquered somebody else, you enslaved those people, you exploited the lower classes, you definitely created a caste system, and the only way to keep that going onward was to continue to find new territories to conquer and exploit. And obviously, if you are geared toward militarism, males are going to be overvalued because they are the combatants. They're the cannon fodder in the next war you want to launch. And generally speaking, female abduction became quite common during this period, so women were viewed as spoils of war, or at the very least, were only defined by their biological ability to crank out another generation of warriors, and female offspring were generally valued less. So these were a lot of the formative reasons why patriarchy became so gender imbalanced in the first place. And here's some food for thought from Helen Keller, of all people. The inferiority of woman is man-made. And Helen Keller lived an extraordinary life by any standard, all the more so because she couldn't see and she couldn't hear. And if a woman who has those particular challenges to face can figure this out, then I think the rest of us need to have our eyes checked. So here's the question. Did we evolve as a male-dominant species? And again, I chose this graphic deliberately because if you look at 4 of these 5 figures, they're obviously all male and they're obviously all carrying some kind of weapon. The second one from the left has a little rock. The one in the middle has a pointy rock, which is probably flint-knapped. The one after that has a club, and the guy on the end has a knife and probably a spear in his other hand. These are all indicative of a certain way of looking at human evolution as competitive, aggressive, and certainly a lot conflict-laden. But the question is this true? Is this how we started out? Is this essentially what human beings are? And as I look out at this sea of faces and the demographic of people in their golden years, you are going to love this next slide.